Joining us now is Steve Codden, a financial strategist and policy expert, to take a look at some polling numbers and our voters sour on Trump and what's going on with our world these days. Hey, welcome in, Steve. Thanks for coming back.
Well, thanks for having me. It's always a great pleasure to be on your program.
Well, it was a bit of a mix at the Knicks game last night at the Garden. There were some cheers, there were some boos, and of course we're in New York and people buying tickets, at $8,000 plus. Of course, these are celebrities and big CEOs, and that group in New York usually lean a little left. So not really surprised at some of the responses we got. But when you look around the general picture of how Americans feel, the latest polling numbers, why don't we start with, I guess, the economy? It seems to be everybody's big reason to vote one way or another in every election. So even though the economists say, hey, look, it's actually looking pretty good. We had job numbers that look good, but when you get down to, kitchen table discussions every day, it's like, man, stuff's expensive. So where are we on the economy with American polling numbers right now?
Well, let me caution everybody. When you look at polling data, keep in mind the 2016 election where most pollsters predicted that Hillary Clinton had an 85% chance of winning the national election. And you know how that turned out.
Good point.
The second thing you got to look at with polling is this a sample size of registered voters or likely voters? Registered voters samples are a lot less accurate than likely voter samples. And that's very important. And the data that I've been reading here recently is only polling registered voters, many of whom will not vote. So that gives you an X factor right there. I would take all of these polls with a huge dose of salt. And I would just keep in mind that polling it's a snapshot of certain kinds of attitudes at a certain point in time, but very changeable.
All right. With that said, and these polling numbers are a bunch of garbage and we can throw them away and not even consider them. What are these polling numbers saying right now?
Well, they're saying a couple of things. One thing is everybody is concerned about the cost of living. That's understandable. Oil prices are elevated, which means everything is elevated. But I think that is largely situational, not structural. And the second thing is the Democrats typically have an off-year election lead when they're out of power, as do the Republicans when they're out of power. But the thing that's surprising is the Democratic lead is razor thin. It's only about 4 points an advantage over the GOP in terms of registered voters, which we know is not quite as accurate. And it ought to be a lot bigger than that. So I think it shows Democratic weakness more than it shows Republican weakness.
Yeah, likely voters versus registered voters. Good point. I hear you. But I think my audience is more locked in on what's going on when it comes to making decisions at the polls, whereas most of America in general, and I'm not trying to take a shot at Americans, I'm just saying that, most people that don't, engage themselves in the process look at bumper stickers and sound bites and, catch little glips of headlines here and there on TV. And it's like, oh, my gosh. And then they know the big ones, obviously. We're in war. It's more expensive when I go to the grocery store. The gas pumps are higher. This guy's not running the country very well. But in reality, when you dig in and look at things, it's a whole different story here. So I think you're right with a grain of salt on these polling numbers. Would you agree that those that are giving the balance that it's a negative picture for the president's administration and what's going on economically in this country is really a false picture from the big pie?
I think it is. It's an incomplete picture. You remember during the Biden years, we had 9% inflation. It's only about 3.8 now.
Yeah.
It's ticked up recently, but it's only about 3.8 now. Now, if you're a trucker, if you're an average person filling their tank, if a mom's buying groceries for the family, you do see that inflation ticking up and you feel it. You go out to eat, and a couple has a couple of drinks and it's over $100 tab. That is partly a legacy of COVID, but we had 172,000 new jobs created last month versus the 88,000 that was predicted. That's huge. There's all kinds of positivity in the economy if you look beyond these headlines.
Well, with the war, a lot of people have said, and I've spoken with a number of different folks on the economy about this war, and it does, throw things out of whack a little bit. But this is you're not a structural inflation issue going on right now. It's it's an incident affecting what's happening in short term at that. So, with that said, do you anticipate when this war is over, hopefully sooner than later, that perception will come back the other way?
Well, I think it can, but I think the Iranians they never negotiate in good faith. They are trying to string out the president and the allies. They are not wanting to settle this. They are beaten militarily, but they're not beaten psychologically. And I think it's going to take major regime change and the elimination of these IRGC thugs that are running the government over there before we can really set the stage for long-term peace in the Middle East. My question is, what's going on below the surface in terms of covert operations to equip and arm the Iranian people that want to get rid of this noxious regime? That's phase two. Nobody's talking about it. That's where the real game is.
Yeah, and also, while everything's going on in the negotiations and the missiles still flying, meanwhile, back on the streets of Iran, they're still, slaughtering their own people based on their beliefs and any, comments made politically. They're continuing with the mass executions, which is just horrific at that. All right, Steve, thank you, buddy. I appreciate you. Steve Cotton, financial strategist and policy expert.